In the first few pages, you tackle one of the more fun controversies, which is the origins of COVID. Tell us, why do you think knowing where COVID came from is important, and what does it say about us that we really want, some people really want this virus to have been manufactured by other people?
Well, so I mean, the virus, at one point was killing 3,000 people a day. It's killed 7 million people in the world. It's killed more than 1 million people in the United States. It's evil. You would argue that virus is evil. So it's nice to be able to ascribe it to an evil doer, because that way you feel like you have more control. And yet conspiracy theories will always be attractive because they're so easy to understand. Plus, there was a political implication to that, right? I mean, the Obama administration did fund research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and so it was very easy for the Trump administration to point to that through people like Rand Paul. I think your question is a great one, because we need to understand how these things arise so that we can decrease the chance that they'll arise again. You had SARS-1 raise its head in 2002. You had MERS, another pandemic coronavirus, raise its head in 2012. This virus raises its head in 2019. That's 3 pandemic coronavirus viruses that have affected us in the last 20 years. Let's assume we're not done with this. I think this actually happens all the time. I think that these pandemic potential viruses probably happen all the time. And it just happens to hit at the right time in the right way in the right population that just takes off. And remember, this was a very mobile population in central China. A lot of people are flying in and out, and it just spread throughout the world. We do need to understand that. And I think the degree that we constantly try and focus on whether or not it was a lab leak is a real waste of time. First of all, there's never been a pandemic virus created in a laboratory. So if you're going to claim that, and if you believe Carl Sagan's line that extraordinary claims should be backed by extraordinary evidence, this is an extraordinary claim that's backed by just conspiracy and innuendo, and it's hard to watch. It is hard to watch people like Marty Macri from Hopkins get up in front of Congress and say, lab leak, no brainer. Or Christopher Wray getting up, representing the FBI, and saying we have credible evidence. There was even a recent article in the Wall Street Journal saying there's credible evidence, which is always just who paid who what. And then there's people kind of whispering behind, well, maybe this was real, that are scientists or epidemiologists. It's hard to watch. It really is.
Yeah, it's disappointing when you have politicians weighing in on the cloak and dagger aspect of it, but not understanding the science part, right?
I'm always fascinated by that, how the evidence used is always circumstantial stuff. It's just, this was at this location, therefore I have concluded. And then when you actually dig into, I don't have the level of expertise that you do and others do, when you say, oh, actually, when you dig into the biology of it, no, that doesn't actually make any sense.
Right. No, that's so all the early cases were there. Western section, Hunan wholesale seafood market. In that section where there were at least 3 dozen mammals that were being sold illegally, many of which were susceptible to SARS virus, or coronaviruses. And so very early on, the Chinese scientists did look for genetic evidence in that area, meaning in the cages, in the materials that were used to kill the animals, and the materials that were used to brush the animals on surfaces. And you saw genetic evidence of coronaviruses there, and all the early cases were there and emanated from there. So think about this. So the lab leak started in the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Then it just didn't travel 9 miles across the Yangtze River and then just deposit itself exactly in an area where an animal to human spillover event would be expected to occur. What are the odds?